Right, so much for the fall of Assad and a bright new dawn for Syria. Not that it has been very bright if you happen to be one of the many disparate ethnic minorities there, especially if you are Alawite or Christian. As we have seen, the new administration of Al-Qaeda castoffs, that is Hayat Tarir Al Sham, or HTS, led by Ahmed Al Sharaa, formerly known as Jolani, he who formerly had a $10 million bounty on his head for his terror crimes, rather than being an improvement, have continued with those terror crimes, targeting those minorities in brutally lethal fashion, all whilst they have allowed the south of the country to be invaded by Israel without a single shot ever being fired in the direction of the IDF. Such is Al Sharaa's determination that he wants to be an Israeli ally, that despite strongly worded statements against Israeli atrocity in his country, he still misses the point. Israel does not want to be his friend. Someone who does profess to be his friend, though, is Erdogan of Turkey, supposedly aiding in the drawing up of a new constitution for Syria, all whilst fighting US-aligned Kurds in the north of the country, whom Israel have been courting for their support as they continue to make their way, seizing more territory in Syria as they go. Al Sharaa's friend Erdogan, and who he wishes was his friend, Netanyahu, appear to be on something of a collision course with each other, but instead, and this is par for the course when it comes to Turkey, Netanyahu and Erdogan appear to be making plans between themselves now. So is Al Sharaa now shut out, and given what we're seeing, is his upstart administration about to fall almost as fast as it appeared? Right, so once upon a time there was this nation called Syria, a regional power as it was in the Middle East, a strategic asset to any who were friends with it, smack bang in the middle of the Middle East as it is. Civil war erupted though. The decades-old despotic Assad regime had gone too far in its oppression, finally falling to the Western-backed and Israeli-backed forces that for several years had occupied and ruled the Idlib governorate in northwestern Syria, with an extremist fist themselves, namely HTS, Hayat Tarir Al Sham, born out of Syria's al-Nusra Front, which was itself born out of Al-Qaeda. So functionally, former Al-Qaeda operatives now ruled the country, and one such individual, Ahmed Al Sharaa, became Syria's unelected de facto president. Was this ever going to be a good thing given the histories of these people and how they had run Idlib under a massively restricted form of Islam? Wasn't likely, was it? But the people of Syria still had hope. After Assad, who can blame them? Of course they hoped things would be better. Instead, Syria has been reduced to a battleground now for foreign powers seeking to exploit its further fragmentation. With the fall of the Assad regime, the new unelected government of Ahmed Al Sharaa was supposed to bring stability. That was the hope of the people. It has presided over a nation on the brink of dissolution, now facing invasions from both Israel from the south and Turkey from the north, who now appear to be quietly negotiating how to partition the country between themselves. For the moment Al Sharaa and HTS took over, Israel invaded from the Golan Heights in the southwest of the country, illegally occupied territory as that had been since 1967. At the same time, Turkey offered the hand of friendship. HTS didn't have many of those at this point, but this seems now to have just been an excuse for Turkish forces to take on their old enemy, the Kurds in northern Syria. And whilst apparently aiding Al Sharaa in the drawing up of a new constitution for the country, so much of that now appears to be mere lip service to have allowed Turkey to expand itself southwards. Israel has long justified its airstrikes inside Syria, including on the capital Damascus, as necessary to nullify Syria as a threat to their national security, because only Israel's national security ever matters, you see. The land in Syria they've gone on to seize, allegedly forming security buffer zones for their own ends, and all despite HTS, who they had formerly supplied with aid, saying they still wanted to be allies. They have very much exceeded their usefulness now, it would appear. Israel also justified this as a counter to Iranian influence and interrupting supply lines to Hezbollah in Lebanon. So Israel's endgame goal here, as I spoke about in another recent video, is the establishment of a land bridge, a David's corridor, so to speak, a corridor connecting Israel to the US Kurdish-controlled lands in northern Syria, which also happens to contain Syria's oil fields. This would require permanent control over southern Syria, securing a direct route to that oil, whilst isolating Lebanon from Iran. And this is becoming more and more possible now, with the US reducing its presence in Syria's oil fields and shifting its forces to Iraq. Israel has moved to strengthen ties with Kurdish militias as a result, who will be looking for new allies in the area, and with no love lost with Turkey, these would be the perfect forces for Israel's own ends if a clash with Turkey is on the cards. By backing the Kurds, Israel gains a proxy force to counter both Turkey and whatever remains of the Syrian state. Despite claiming to target Iranian proxies in the area, hypocrisy writ large as they court the Kurds, as well as claiming Syria under Al Sharaa is still a threat to Israel, despite Al Sharaa continuing to prove he's an absolute poodle towards them by letting them invade with impunity, Israel's recent ground operations suggest a broader annexation strategy at work here. Reports have indicated that Israeli forces are establishing forward bases in southern Syria, effectively creating a buffer zone under military occupation as they continue to progress towards those northern oil fields. But then we have to turn to Turkey as well. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has positioned himself as Syria's friend and defender, condemning Israeli aggression and supporting anti-Assad factions. Now he is apparently negotiating with Israel to divide Syria rather than challenge its incursions, and in preference to supporting Al Sharaa's new administration, unelected as that is. You see, reports have now come out that Turkey and Israel are in talks with each other to avoid a fight over territory, to avoid a punch-up and a dust-up over Syrian territory. Instead, are now seeking to establish a deconfliction line within Syria, a tacit agreement on where each can operate in their side of Syria, if you like, without clashing with each other. Israel and Turkey are, by definition, plotting to annex Syria between the two of them, therefore, utterly destabilising Syria itself, and Al Sharaa left totally isolated, unable to fight both of them, having wasted what little by way of armed forces and munitions he had left after the downfall of Assad, wasted fighting ethnic minorities in what amounts to nothing more than petty vengeance on his part against those his faction, his HTS, see as unacceptable and are too close to that former Assad regime, which is gone. This deconfliction line would likely take the form of Israel taking the south, being the Golan Heights, and beyond all the way up to the northeastern areas held by the Kurds, those oil fields, while Turkey would consolidate its holds over the north along its own borders, taking in Idlib, Afrin and other border regions. Turkey's rhetoric about protecting Syrian sovereignty somewhat rings hollow as things stand here now, therefore, as it collaborates with Israel seemingly to dismember the country. This is possibly rather predictable, though. Turkey's economy and its politics have, under Erdogan, become increasingly westernised. Therefore, any conflict with Israel would be catastrophic for them. The West would not permit their colonial project in the Middle East to be attacked by Turkey. This is, I think, largely why Erdogan has been all words when it comes to Israel. Talking the talk whilst never walking the walk, continuing to talk the talk, so to speak, while he has maintained supplying oil to Israel from Azerbaijan at the same time. His hypocrisy has long been known about. He's a hypocritical idiot trying to please both sides. But it doesn't take much digging to show all his actions up for being an utter sham, because he really can't afford to ever come to blows with Israel. Therefore, rather than resisting Israeli expansion, rather than coming to blows with them, Erdogan is ensuring Turkey gets its own slice of the pie instead, exposing his true priority as being one of self-serving territorial ambition, chiefly over the Kurds, not Syrian stability at all. In fact, despite Turkey's courting of Al Sharaa's shambolic administration, Turkey's obsession with crushing Kurdish autonomy in northern Syria has led to further destabilisation, and again, Al Sharaa has just sat there, seeming to just let it happen, even when his own forces have been in some of those northern areas, but too busy choosing to persecute the Alawites instead of defending its own borders. As Israel courts those Kurdish forces, Turkey may end up having to back off, as long as the Kurds leave those border regions. Though my word of caution there is the Kurds are also the guards of numerous prison camps containing tens of thousands of ISIS prisoners in the north, and all of this destabilisation risks their release more and more. And I haven't heard either side talk of what to do about that. ISIS remnants still persist in central Syria, and should these prisoners get loose, they could potentially rebuild, causing further problems festering from within as Turkey and Israel seemingly divide the Syrian spoils. Ahmed Al Sharaa's HTS-led government was never legitimate. It seized power in the chaos following Assad's fall, which they brought about, with no electoral mandate amid claims elections are 4 or 5 years down the line, when it's looking more and more likely that Al Sharaa won't be in power then. Now his inability to resist foreign invasions has made him a figurehead presiding over a vanishing state. The rug is being pulled out from under him, and it's not even been 6 months yet since Assad fell. Functionally, Al Sharaa's illegitimate sovereignty has completely crumbled. He has no military to speak of to resist with on one hand. The fight to bring down Assad after 11 years of civil wars weakened state defences, left HTS weakened itself, and Israel going around blowing up munition dumps and other strategic military assets left in Syria have made sure matters stay that way. Al Shara's reliance on Turkey as one of its few friends has now seemingly backfired, as they now appear to be prioritising their own interests over Syria's survival. Fundamentally, what we're now seeing is the beginning of Syria's territory being carved up to suit more powerful neighbours. Al Shara's government may soon find itself ruling over little more than just Damascus on its own, as Israel and Turkey carve matters up. If he cannot reassert control, or even assert it to begin with, he's shown no sign of even cursory ability to do so. His regime is on borrowed time already, either through further internal revolt or complete foreign domination, in all likelihood a bit of both. This realignment, should it fully come to pass, risks turning Syria into a patchwork of foreign-backed fiefdoms, ripe for terror groups to exploit, with no central authority left. As I see it, there are three possible outcomes for what happens next, given Israeli-Turkish plotting. For one, we could see full partition of Syria, India and Pakistan all over again, in a manner of speaking, where Israel and Turkey formalise their bits, their zones, and reduce Syria to either a rump state or absorbing parts of it into their own borders, which would cause all manner of global political fallout. It'd be like Israel's plans for Gaza, but on steroids here. So I think it unlikely to be anything formal. The UN just would never have it. More de facto seizures of land instead, occupation. They seem to have been fine with Israel doing that for the last 50-odd years, haven't they? Possibly a rump Syrian administration left that Al Sharaa can preside over, left with the ruins, largely powerless. Alternatively, Turkish hatred of the Kurds could be a bigger issue going forwards. Those potential Kurdish-Israeli ties may provoke a Turkish military response against the Kurds within Syria, not necessarily directly with Israel, just with their proxies here, as it would be, which may spark a wider conflict still. And thirdly, we could be looking at total regime collapse, with Al Shara's government completely falling, as Syria left in total anarchy, while Israel and Turkey grab what they can. In all scenarios, Syrians suffer whilst foreign powers profit. Their hopes for a better future post-Assad seemingly crushed regardless because of a weak-as-water leader with no real power or mandate, thinking he can ally himself with people you shouldn't trust any further than you can throw them. Syria's tragedy is no longer just about war now, it is about erasure. Israel and Turkey are now conspiring to dismantle the country to some extent or other. I doubt either knows to what extent themselves yet, while Al Shara's weak regime presumably just keeps on watching and never acting. The US withdrawal from Kurdish lands, leaving a mess behind them as usual, will only accelerate the freefall. Will Syria soon cease to exist as a coherent nation? Do you see a different outcome here? Do tell me all about it in the comments below if so. I'd love to read them. Meanwhile, where things are going less Israel's way is Iran, who are set to have indirect meetings with the Trump administration this weekend, sending Netanyahu into a rage-filled fit. All of his plans and wishes for a US-Iran war may be off the table. So do indulge yourself in some Netanyahu misery by checking out this video recommendation here as your suggested next watch, guaranteed to cheer anybody up if he's crying about something. Please do also hit like, share and subscribe if you haven't done so already, so as to ensure you don't miss out on all new content published daily, as well as supporting the channel at the same time, which is very much appreciated, holding power to account for ordinary working class people, and I will hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers folks.